What's going on YouTube? It's James Q Quick from Learn, Build, Teach, and I'm excited to share with you a new code review. So let's go ahead and dive on in. All right, so I got this request from a local developer in Memphis named Coriano Harris, one of my friends in the community, very active in the community. Love the stuff that he's doing. He went through a boot camp in Atlanta and is now in Memphis, trying to improve his skills, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. So he sent me his soccer activity stats tracker application on GitHub. And as usual, I opened this up with Gitpod, and Gitpod allows you to basically bring in a GitHub repository. It will create an environment for you and allow you to do all of your editing and running of the application right inside of the terminal. Or not inside of the terminal, inside of the web browser, which is really, really cool. So that's what I'm using Gitpod here for. I've got all of his code up. I've actually got it running. And what I needed to do to get it to run is do an npm install and then an npm start, I think is what it was. So for people that are new to maybe looking at other people's code, most JavaScript applications these days will have a package.json. This will define it as basically a JavaScript application. Inside of there, you can put information about the name, the version, the dependency. These are the npm packages that it depends on, and some scripts to be able to start and build and test your application, and a description and a few other things. So here's one thought actually that I missed when I looked at this before. It's got React Router as a dev dependency. I don't think that typically that should be a regular dependency. Dev dependencies are ones that you only run during development and are not really exposed to you or not brought into your application during production. React Router is something that you want to bring into production, so I'm a little confused as to why that's in dev dependencies. All right, so this is what we got. What we're looking at is a create React app application. You can tell by the references to React scripts and well, actually, I guess I think you could use React scripts without create React app. Either way, it's a basic React application. And so what I would start with is the index.js. This is kind of like the index HTML of a basic web application. And in React, it's going to be the index.js. Inside of here, you're using the React router DOM, which is cool. One of the things that I noticed is that you've got your different routes defined, but a lot of them are all using the same component. And typically the way routing works is you will define your different routes, and each one of those paths will then have its own corresponding component. And if I look inside of the app.js and look at the actual JSX here, you're doing some checks to see what the path name is. So if it's root or if it's add day or something else, then you're displaying certain components that way. Typically, you could just do that right side in here. Go ahead and tell us to go directly to that component. It's either the home component or the, what else were they? The add day form or the soccer day list. If you define that right side, right inside of your app.js, inside of your router stuff, you won't have to worry about checking the path later on. So I think you could simplify that a little bit and clean it up a little bit. There's another thing I had on here. What was it? All right, I'm forgetting. Oh, I just want to mention, you notice the last route definition down here goes to a component called whoops 404. This is a pretty common concept where you define all of your routes. If your path doesn't match any of those, then show a 404 component, meaning they've come to a page that you don't actually have or you don't support for your website. So you always want to have basically a backup as a 404 page just to show, hey, this is not part of the application. So that's a good thing. Inside of your app.js, I want to just kind of call out, you're taking advantage of some good ES6 features, things like the spread operator. In this scenario, you're creating an array where you're making a copy of everything in this array and then adding in a new day on your state. So that's cool. You're also using object destructuring. So from this .state, you're getting a reference to all soccer days. This one is not, there's not a whole lot of advantage in this case. It would look something like this if you didn't use destructuring, but destructuring can be really useful, especially when you're trying to get multiple values out of something, out of an object, and assign them to variables. But cool use of destructuring there. Let's go back to what it was. And then using the filter, this is not ES6, this is ES5, I think is when these array functions came in. But you're using the filter with the arrow syntax, and that is part of ES6. So you've got this really concise way to write a custom filter for your all soccer days, and then you're just returning the length, and that's how many days are associated with that type of soccer day. Also, I forgot to mention, I've got the project actually running up here. And so what this is a way to, instead of started with this, a way to track your activity for different types of soccer. And I think soccer is basically turf versus outdoor, maybe, I think is what you define it as. So you've got a total of 4 workouts planned. 3 of them are going to be outdoor. 1 is going to be turf, I think. Then you've got a percentage down here, which shows you're at 4% of your activity goal. So if your goal is 30 in a month, this would be the percentage of ones that you have scheduled for how many you have in the month. And we'll come back to a few of the other ones in a minute. All right, so again, just on the JSX here, you're checking for the path name. You could take care of that by just directly referencing this component inside of the app.js. So let's look at the add day form. In the add day form, which is this one, you're adding a day. You can choose from a list of fields. You can type in a date and then choose whether it's grass or turf and then add that day. So first thing I notice is you've got the fields hard-coded. So eventually long-term, you could take this to be something in a database, whatever the total number of fields that you have available, pull those from the database and then use them the same way. Also, I'm a little confused. You defined an autocomplete component here. And when I go into this, I can actually type in some text and have it be auto-completed. But I'm not sure if there's anything you're doing inside of here to make that happen. I would expect there to be like a filter call to filter those items based on the input. And I would expect there to be basically an on change or on key up in the input for you to handle updating that list. So I'm not sure. I might just be overlooking something that it kind of takes care of itself, but I'm not sure where you're actually doing the autocomplete part yourself there. Then just inside of your data list, you're using map, which is awesome. So it's pretty essential in JavaScript, JSX, or in React and JSX. But it is a new thing. Well, I guess map existed in ES5, and then you're using the arrow syntax with ES6, which is cool there, just to lay out all of your options. All right, and then you've got your form. I don't know exactly. I guess you're just using the underscore here to differentiate between the inputs from the props. And again, you're using destructuring here. This is a really good use of destructuring where we have multiple values. You can go ahead and grab those automatically. So I guess you're just using the underscore to differentiate between the ones defined up here. Let's come down to the form. You've got your autocomplete just kind of inside of the form because you already created it separately. I like the idea of breaking. I'm a little unsure what autocomplete actually does, but I do like the idea of you taking something and breaking it out into a little more granular levels in React components. So that's good. Let's see. Oh, you've got ref defined twice, and I think you maybe not right here, but I think in other places you do have that as well. So I think those kind of things you would only reference once. All right, so now let's go to the soccer day count, and I think this is going to be that home. This is going to be this display here, where it actually displays the number of appropriate days and percentages. So you've got some default values in here. Ideally, you don't need that, right? So if you're using real data and you're pulling it from a database, you won't need defaults there. But just for your kind of the stage that you're at now, obviously having defaults is cool. And that's a recent feature. Recent is ES6, I think. Feature of JavaScript where you can define default values, which is actually really handy. So you're displaying certain icons based on the section, and then you're displaying the number associated with it. That's cool. And then you've got a function to calculate the goal progress. So you've got a total and a goal. You call this thing, which then calls this function. I think for right now, you could simplify this to just call one of these functions, because basically you're just returning this thing in the end. But Again, I like that you're breaking this out into things that make a little bit more logical sense together. You could also, if you get some auto formatting going, you can take care of this kind of stuff, clean that up just a bit. And you got your prop types defined down there. I haven't actually used prop types that much, but I like the idea of that. I think it's a good thing to have. So that's cool. Then you got your soccer day list. And so this is when you show, basically account like a list of the different activities that you have planned. So you've got your list here. You're using some regex. That's cool. So match is regex, where you can define patterns and see if a string matches a pattern. That's cool. Regex is super confusing. I always have to look up what the syntax is, but regex is super, super powerful. So hats off to using that a bit there. I do want to call out there. So you've got your filter days and your prop types. Where is it? Here. Oh no, let's start with just days. So you're checking to make sure days is an array. I think with prop types, you can actually define it as an array. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I'm pretty sure you can define it as an array, and you don't have to check it yourself to see if it is an array. Then you're also checking to see, this is a shorthand syntax to basically say if props.days.length is falsy. A lot of things in JavaScript will automatically convert to falsy. A length of 0 would convert to falsy in this case. So you're checking to see, but in the future, you won't need to check that. An empty array is okay if someone is starting from scratch. All right, I think I made that maybe a little bit extra confusing, but that's all right. So then you've got your display for each row, and that basically just is displaying an icon and then the number associated with each one. And so now we can dive into the CSS, and let's just, on the add day form CSS, and I'm just grabbing these from here, you've got a generic button defined. If this is going to be a button that you'll reuse outside of your form, I would recommend putting that inside of like your index CSS, if that's where kind of your generic stuff goes. Otherwise, if this is a specific button for that form, I would prefix this with some sort of class of some sort. All right, so let's move over to the index CSS, scroll up to the top. A couple of things that I noticed, if I scroll down, you got font size defined twice. I doubt, maybe depending on what this is for. So this is the header and the index. Let's see what that looks like. Hopefully you can't hear the dogs barking in the background. Font size of 900. I'm not sure exactly why you'd actually want 900 if you're actually using it. I'm not sure. Well, 900, it's not even pixels. All right, so you wouldn't have two of these defined. Also, if you scroll down, you've got margin top defined twice. And then you've got that same margin defined in a lot of different places, along with some font sizes. I think this is something that you could, especially for these two classes are basically the exact same. They've got the same, so font weight, padding bottom, margin top, color. Yeah, they basically got the exact same stuff in here. So you could make that class a little bit more generic to cover both of those. You could also look at using something like Sass or CSS variables to define, like you're using this margin top of 20 pixels. Go ahead and define that as a value, as a constant, and you can use it all across your application. And then if you need to update that, it'll update all across as well. So CSS variables or Sass, or you could also do, what am I thinking here? Oh, you could also use mixins in Sass. So you could have Sass variables or mixins with Sass to help kind of remove some of the redundancy. Font size, bolder. I might just be missing something. I don't actually know what bolder is. Font style can be bold. So if bolder is something and I'm just missing it, that's on me. But double check that to make sure that's actually something that you want. And then again, you wouldn't have two font sizes defined there. So just think about the amount of things: font size, margin top, color black, width. All those things look very similar. How do you take those up a level and kind of remove some of that extra code? All right, then we got a little bit of code in here using Flexbox. I'm a big fan of Flexbox. I haven't gotten into CSS Grid as much as honestly, barely. I feel like I should do it more, but I usually default to Flexbox at this point. So that's cool that you're using that. Few more. Okay, just kind of basic. You could, since these things are being used across multiple different classes, could just give it a more generic class and use this kind of as a mix-in. And this is kind of close to what I was saying earlier, where you've got your margin You got your margin defined, you've got a color, and then you got text align center. There's a lot of reusability in here, so you could start to optimize that some as well. And then I think this is the last CSS page that we have. So all in all, I think really cool. You're using React. React is one of the things that I would recommend people learning most that are getting into web development after really learning JavaScript itself. I would also recommend learning ES6 JavaScript, which you're obviously taking advantage of with object destructuring, using arrow functions, using default parameters, and the spread operator. That's really cool. Keep that up. Keep doing that sort of stuff. And all in all, cool project. Hopefully some of this feedback will help optimize the code a little bit and standardize it a little bit and help you take that next step forward. So Coriano, I appreciate you taking the time to let me take the time to look at your project. Hopefully it helps. Hopefully it helps other people that are watching as well. And I will see you in the next code review. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. You can also check out learnbuildteach.com to sign up for the newsletter to learn about my latest content. Thanks for watching.